Good morning, everybody, and welcome to another Sports Community live stream. I'm Steve Pallas from lockdown and now curfewed Melbourne. So to everyone else that's outside of Victoria, stay safe and make sure that you follow all the rules because you don't want to be like we are in Melbourne and Victoria and locked down again. So that creates some challenges. So a couple of weeks ago, we asked clubs what's been their biggest challenge through the COVID period and in this period of social isolation. And so in that was one of our most popular Facebook posts. And there was a number of common themes that I just wanted to touch on. Vanessa says, uncertainty when we'll be able to move forward, inconsistency in regulations, rules, keeping members informed, and financial support. So one of the big challenges through the COVID period has been the whole concept of communication. And picking up what Dean says, continued communication through the no play period when there was no updates given, checking in on players, people from a mental health perspective. So one of the challenges was that the peak sporting bodies needed to receive the information, interpret it for their sport, and then pass it down. And that often took delays. So one of the things that we've been saying to clubs all the way through this COVID period is continue to communicate with your members, your supporters, your sponsors, everybody through this period, even if you've got nothing to say. And as Dean says, checking in with people has been a really important process. It's also identified that there's a significant number of club members and club supporters that aren't online. So that check-in process is important that we do that from a telephone calling perspective and reaching out perspective. So don't leave any members behind. So one of the big areas of concern and frustration from members to clubs is that vacuum of communication. So it's better to communicate, even if you've got nothing to say, that's still a message. Not getting a refund from Netball Victoria. Sports are really, particularly the winter sports that were expecting to play, collected money expecting to play, have actually staff themselves expecting to play and now trying to work out what they do with refunding. So continually stay in touch with your peak bodies, inquire about the refunds, because what we're seeing now is refund policies come through as there's a little bit more certainty. So for instance, in Victoria, we now know that a certain block of sports are not going to play, some will play. What does that mean from a refund policy? Joe says we're just starting back now. This is a week ago. Trusting people to be honest and stay at home with their kids when they're sick or visited hotspots. And I think that needs to be continual messaging, is that it's really strong messaging from the club. Hey, don't come to the club if you've been to a hotspot, if you've got any symptoms at all. That's strong, constant messaging needs to be coming through. The one thing that seems to be tricking us up the two things that seem to be tricking us up as a society. One is the asymptomatic cases, which it's very difficult to do anything about that. But we can know whether we've been to a hotspot or not. So that's really important. And the other one is complacency. So making sure that we just continually reinforce to our members the rules, the expectations, and the cost of getting it wrong. With all the hotspots and all the places that there's been COVID clusters, to date, it hasn't been a sports club. And I think that's brilliant work on behalf of the sports clubs. So there's people online this morning. So jump in and share what's been your toughest challenge from a club perspective in the comments section of the post through this. And let's take about your comments and thoughts as well. Laurie says the obvious one that's coming through is the financial challenges. And one of the things that's caused so many financial challenges within clubs is that the shutdown happened so dramatically quickly. And it happened at almost the wrong time of the year. It happened at the end of the summer season. So when clubs have pretty much gone down with their reserves, and at the start of the winter season, so they might not have actually collected the membership fees. So it's that window of really poor timing. So what that means for clubs is that we need to be having a really strong understanding of what our costs are moving forward and what can we reduce. What can we go and talk to the people that we need the money, council, our landlords, etc., and how can we reduce those? And then when we get them down to the bare minimum, how can we raise funds to cover those costs? So there are lots of fundraising that we're seeing for clubs over the last 3 or 4 months, which we're calling COVID fundraising. And so we're going to do another session on COVID fundraising next week, which will be really, really important, just to remind ourselves that there are lots of different ways that clubs are successfully raising funds. Manda kind of comes back to the communication, keeping people playing, keeping them connected. Taryn absolutely talks about the strain on the volunteer committee. We're seeing committees being more worked, more challenged, more stressed than ever, and often they haven't even played a game or a competition this year. So collectively, there's a couple of ways to deal with that strain is make sure we're communicating, make sure we're connecting, but also making sure we're bringing people in to help us with the workload, because the work doesn't have to just be done by the committee. We can be bringing people in and saying, hey, we've got these certain tasks, whether it's communication, making us COVID safe, doing the research, following what the peak body's saying. We can be spreading the load and doing it right. And easing that strain on the committee. Trusting that our coaches and managers, given the information, will do the right thing. Now, again, that trusting that they'll do the right thing and follow the guidelines is we just need to be confident that they are as well. So we do need to touch base, continually need to be checking in on the coaches, because their coaches are volunteers and they're doing the right thing as they see it. And so often what we're seeing is a lot of the issues are coming because a coach or a team manager may have misinterpreted the information that's come down to them. So constantly checking in on the coaches. But another really cool thing to do is maybe do a Zoom meeting with the coaches once a week or once a fortnight to get them together. What did they learn? What's been the challenges that they've faced? Has one coach overcome that, etc., so that they can be collaboratively learning and working together to get through the challenges, the different idiosyncrasies that are going to occur at the coalface of sports participation. The benefit, as Taryn says, is the ability to, and seeing people have the pleasure of doing what we've actually taken for granted, as it's turned out. Well, certainly in Victoria, we just assume we've always been able to participate. The uncertainty is challenging for many. And I guess what we need to be doing is flicking it around. Instead of saying we don't know what's going to happen, the one thing that we do know that's going to happen is things are going to be constantly changing. So we need to be getting our mind around that and getting ourselves into a process. If we're a committee, okay, the state changes the regulations. Okay, the peak body changes the regulations. what's our process? The committee comes together within 24 hours. So who's responsible for getting that information and finding out what it means? So the one thing that we do know now is the change is going to be quite rapid and continual, I would suggest, for the next 6 months. So don't look at that as a negative. Look at that as that's what it is. And so then what's our process that we're going to deal when change is either triggered by the Premier or the peak sporting body or the council? What's our process and what's our communication so we can just get that into our normal routine? Because it's going to be normal. So let's just start to expect the change, either positively or negatively. So in Victoria, it's still going down, but in other states like Western Australia, it's positive, the change. So how do we control that positively? Rhiannon, engagement with coaches and members. So we are seeing clubs that are doing weekly, fortnightly Zoom meetings with their communities, or kind of every 3 weeks or so, just keeping them up to date. Email newsletters going out, just keeping them up to date. It doesn't need to be much. Social media posts here and there, every couple of days, keeping them up to date with the latest news. Remembering, if there's no news, that's still news. The one thing that we don't want to have is this vacuum of silence from our club to our members, our coaches, etc. And again, Russell picks that up. So we're seeing that communication is that constant theme. Russell picks that up, keeping members updated with the correct information, even if it's constantly changing. And remember, I think it's just as easy to do a little video about the changes. So the president talks about the changes, or it doesn't need to be the president, right? That's what we normally assume. It's going to be the president that does this. It can be anybody that's getting the information from the committee, and the committee has got to authorize the communications, obviously, but it can be anyone being that spokesperson. And so we could do just a weekly video or even weekly live stream. When we do daily live streams, that's why we do daily live streams, is to overcome that information vacuum. So there are ways to get information out quickly to your members that are not really time draining, and live streaming is a great way of doing it. So I encourage clubs to look at that live streaming. Stacey Spears. So Stacey's got a number of different hats on, if you like. She's at a club level. She's also at the state level. Cash flow, recruitment is a challenge with uncertainty. But again, that uncertainty, we can be using that uncertainty from a recruitment perspective to our advantage. When we're all locked down or restricted, we can be sowing the seeds for what we can be doing later on. So this is a great time to be sowing the fields, planting the seeds of, hey, this would be a great sport to come back into when we get going. Follow our page, stay in touch, keep in on the email newsletter, so that we can be building the energy, the excitement, the understanding of our sport. And Stacey comes from gridiron, so which is not one of those high participation sports. So the downtime is actually an opportunity for smaller sports to really take advantage of and create themselves as a real viable opportunity or option when people do come back, right? Because their habits are broken. In Victoria, there's a whole year of footballers, as an example, that are not playing. So do they go back to what they normally did, or do they go, you know what, I'm going to try something new, something different? So just flying through cash flow, get everything up and running again, to have it taken away. I mean, that's a thing as well, that taken away type concept. So yeah, really, really, couple of themes: the cash, the communication, and the uncertainty. So now there's what's come through. So each week we'll be asking a question of the week, get your feelings, and then we'll profile it in the live stream. Before we go today, I just wanted to remind everybody of the sports community GeoSnap shot pitcher competition. And we're seeing some great pitchers come in from clubs. Now, this pitcher, as an example, looks like just a normal premiership pitcher. But as with all great pitchers, there's a story. Attached is one of the Lithgow Bears Rugby League's most memorable moments. It was when they won the premiership. The male holding the trophy, Jeremy Fittler. So Jeremy was the Bears captain and unfortunately lost his life to mental illness. So and then the post goes on to talk about what the club does for mental illness, which is just a brilliant story. We come up. It's a sad story, and it's creating a positive out of a sad scenario. But the picture tells that story. We just go up. We've got black and white, and I always love the photos of the wicket keepers. Being an ex-wicket keeper, what an iconic photo. Mark from Morwell Cricket Club, Alan Matheson, wicket keeper. This came on the back of us getting through to a grand final that the season, on the back of a tie in the semi-final. Epic memory for the club from the 70s. Just flying through. Whoops. Let me just go back. Just going back. There's a couple of other great ones. Again, love this one. These are actually opposition players. The team is Eastwood Springwood in their first game of the season. The kids were having a blast on a roll. The young boy bending over just had a hard tackle made on him, good smack in the ribs. The other young boy was worried and went to check on whilst the game was still going ahead. He waved the coach to signal the other boy was hurt. You know, that showcases what sport's all about. And you know, another one, the joy of sport. We spoke about the joy of sport. Dicko, the coach, playing a huge role, getting the kids active. Fantastic. The Earsvale Aspendale girls winning their first game in over a year. Just the joy that sport will bring is just huge. And I'll just find one more. That's a club. The Energy, the whole club from the Sydney BMX Club, which is just fantastic. Another iconic volunteer that is savouring a premiership win. The Essence of South Yarra Football Netball Club by one man, Bruce Hill, club secretary, 700 games, OAM, free services to sport. The premiership was the reward. This one, it's not as bad as it looks. That would look like an injury. But what it is, it shows the heartbreak of sport. The line that came in, it's devastating when you miss a penalty shot, but it's how you get up and bounce back that matters. We've all felt like that in sport in some way, shape, or form. And I think that's all the photos for today. So I'm going to leave it on that photo as a great. The kid's not injured; he's just heartbroken. So I'm Steve Pallas. We'd love to get your competition photos that best epitomizes, summarizes your club, the people of your club, what it stands for, and send it through to us. Go to the link that's in this post and get it in by Friday. Then over the next week or so, we'll launch the top 10 photos for you to vote on and decide which is the GeoSnap Sports Community Photo of the Year. So until tomorrow, I'm Steve Pallas. Thank you for making us part of your sports community.